Do you have a main in Smash Ultimate? If you do, how did you find them? If you don't, I think I can help you. My first Smash video over 3 years ago was about how I ended up with my first main, Robin. And as more DLC came out, I found myself switching to newer characters who either fit my playstyle better or who made me want to play them. Throughout the journey, I've given and followed the mantra that you don't really choose a main, but rather that a main is a character that intrinsically clicks with you after playing the game for a certain amount of time. That was how I discovered who I would use as my main anyway, but over the past 3 years, I've played for literally thousands of hours, and I've grown as a player way more than I would have guessed since I made my first video. Was I wrong in my assessment all this time? Is choosing a main really more complicated than I made it out to be? Is it even worth still having a main? Well, stick around, and I'll explain how my opinions on choosing a main have changed since I first started playing Smash Ultimate. So let's start by addressing the advice I traditionally give about choosing a main. You don't choose a main, your main chooses you. Not only is this something that I found to be true when I was maining Robin and Byleth, but I've also heard from hundreds of people who say that this advice is exactly what they needed to find a main themselves. And for the majority of people playing, I think that's still true. I'm going to be blunt here. Most people who play this game aren't going to be top players, even at their local level. If you picked up this game for the reason I think you did, then your main priority is to have fun, not to get onto your state's power rankings. If that's the case, then there's a good side and a bad side to this. If you're a newer player, it means that you'll be more likely to click with one specific character based on their kit. When I first picked up Robin, she had everything I needed. She had a chargeable neutral B, a high recovery, a move to put space between me and my opponent, and a disjointed hitbox. When I first picked up the game, I thought my strengths would align with zoners. But as it turns out, I actually really love sword characters. And since Robin is a mixture between the two, she was the perfect character for me to start out with. Likewise, there will be characters that click with you based on how you like playing the game. Maybe you're willing to sacrifice speed for stronger hits, in which case characters like Ganondorf or King Dedede might be a good choice for you. Maybe you prefer more technical characters, in which case you might enjoy Shulk or Olimar. There's lots of different options to choose from in terms of playstyle, and the only way you can find what works for you is by trying out everything until you naturally find yourself gravitating to one character in particular. When that happens, congrats! You just found your main! Now, that's the good news. What about the bad news? Well, as you can imagine, some people take this game more seriously than others, and their process might be a little different. Before that though, I want to make sure that I make this as clear and concise as I possibly can. There is nothing wrong with wanting to stay a casual player. This can be one of the most frustrating games in the entire world if you play it competitively, and I've heard of people who wound up with actual physical health problems because of the stress they experienced while trying to become a top player. The only reason you should ever play competitively is if you love the game and don't find the casual aspects of the game as fun as they used to be. Never allow someone else to dictate how you play your game. If you prefer 2-stock matches, do it. If you prefer to have stage hazards on, do it. If you enjoy playing against CPUs, do it. There will be people who look down on you for it, but honestly, I look down on them for trying to make you play the way that they want all the time. Now, what does that have to do with choosing your main? Well, this brings me into my next caveat. Tier lists. You might hear some people blaming their failures on a character because they're low tier, but in reality, the tier of a character has nothing to do with your success. Let me repeat, it's not that tiers have little to do with your success, they have literally no correlation with how successful you are. Tier lists always come down to people's personal opinions about which characters have the highest ceilings based on their speed, frame data, size, and other similar metrics. But at the same time, tier lists are constantly changing based on tournament results and new tech that people learn about different characters, which means that even for top 10 players in the world, tier lists are essentially useless. Cloud, Rosalina, Olimar, Corrin, and Byleth are all seen as mid to low tier by many professional players, yet all of them have been used in major tournaments by top players who felt confident using them. Sure, you might find more top players using Pac-Man than Piranha Plant, but that's just because more top players feel like they can get better results with Pac-Man than Piranha Plant. It doesn't necessarily mean that Piranha Plant is intrinsically worse, and if a top player found that they clicked with the Plant game, maybe we'd even see it start to climb up people's tier lists. There was one person who left a comment in one of my videos, and I wish I could find this person to give them credit, because I think that this was one of the most profound insights I've ever heard. He said, "Don't choose your character based on where they fall on a tier list, Let your skill determine what tier they're in. No matter what level you're at, from just picking up the game to being one of the best in the world, your results will not change based on the tier of what character you pick. The only way to win is by learning your character, learning the fundamentals, and learning how to adapt to what your opponent is doing. However, there is a caveat to all this. As you get better at the game, you might find that the character you picked has lots of weaknesses. You might be improving at one particular aspect, but that aspect just happens to be a weakness that your character has, a weakness which your opponent has no trouble exploiting. At this point, there are two options. Keep playing with your main so that you can learn to overcome those weaknesses, or start playing around with other characters. The first option is better in theory, but in the long run, you'd be better off playing with more characters. Even if you solo main, you should always be experimenting with other characters. There's two reasons for this. First of all, it allows you to find other characters who may click with your new talents and abilities. And second, even if you decide to continue maining the same character, experimenting with the rest of the roster can help you find a secondary to handle your intrinsically bad matchups. What if you still can't find a main though? What if you've been playing for hundreds of hours and still can't find a specific character that resonates with you? I think there could be two possibilities for this. The first is that you're losing no matter who you pick, in which case I just recommend playing against CPUs until you find a character that you have fun using, regardless of whether you win or lose. Playing against CPUs takes away some of that pressure, so I'd highly recommend using them as a tool to just practice without worrying about your results. The second possibility is that maybe you just don't find any one character that you have more fun with than any of the others, which in my opinion is a great position to be in. So let's go back to me for a second. I first picked up Robin as my main before I got any of the DLC. Then Byleth was released and I started maining her. Then Min Min got released and she became my new secondary. Then Pyra got released and I started solo maining her. Then Sora came out, and at this point, does it even matter who I main anymore? Let me be blunt one more time. I mained Robin in the beginning because I was getting the best results with her. When I switched to Byleth, it was because I was having so much fun that when I started losing, I felt more confident using her than using Robin. Now that I've put in thousands of hours into this game, I feel confident with half the cast. I have a lot of fun with Sora, and I love using both him and Inkling. If I chose my main based on who I get the best results with now, I'd main Min Min and secondary Pyra. But even though I love both those characters, I don't know if they're who I want to represent me as a player like Sora and Inkling do. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe I just like Kingdom Hearts and Splatoon more than Xenoblade 2 or ARMS. You know what though? It doesn't matter, because I'm having an absolute blast whether I win or lose. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. First of all, you should never let a tier list impact who you choose to use or not. You should use whoever you think is interesting or fun. You should have a growth mindset, that your main goal is to get better at the game, and the character you use is just a tool to make that happen. You shouldn't stress about finding one character to use as a solo main, because while finding one character to use may help you develop more fluency and get better results, it isn't worth it if you aren't enjoying the process. Let your main come to you, whether that takes 20 minutes or 2 years. Experiment with all the different characters on the roster. Try out characters you never thought you'd use. Personally, I think that Mii Swordfighter is one of the worst characters in the game, but after playing around and experimenting with them, they've become one of my top 10 characters. You'd be amazed who clicks with you if you just give them a chance. How has my opinion about mains changed over the years? You shouldn't even worry about having a main until you feel like your results at tournaments start to matter. If one comes to you, then great! Use that character as much as you can! If not, then maybe you're just like me. I'm just trying to have a good time playing a game I love. And whether I use my favorites, my best characters, or someone who I haven't used since Melee, I'm getting better every step of the way. So, what do you think? Do you have a main? Are there any other insights you think are worth mentioning? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.